The fastest way to ruin a brand new dry suit isn't salt or storage, it's the small mistakes operating it on a daily basis. I'm Don, and I've made many mistakes during my learning journey, so you don't have to. Learn from me as I sought to improve my dive suit game for cold water diving over the years. You'll learn the safest way to don your suit, the post-dive habits that extend its life, and the zipper-killing mistakes to avoid. Let's get you into that suit the right way so you can enjoy cold water diving. A dry suit is like a life support and potentially insulation, depending if you're tri-laminate or neoprene, all in one. And small choices have big consequences. Let's go through a repeatable system to stay warm, stay dry, and protect the most expensive parts of your dry suit kit. We'll set seals without tearing them, route that P-valve safely, and handle the zipper like the precision part that it is. And it starts by building good prep habits before you even get your suit on. It's often a great idea to lay out a clean mat so that your suit and zipper stay away from sand and grit. Of course, it depends on where you're diving, if you're shore diving or boat diving. But if you're shore diving, especially if there's dirt around, lay out a mat. It's usually a good idea. When in storage and when in travel, make sure that you keep your dry suit zipper straight and supported. Don't leave it with any kinks, and try not to put anything heavy or anything really on top of the zipper. Always keep that zipper straight as possible. And when you're getting it out and trying to put it on, keep it straight until you're basically inside of it. After you've unpacked your suit, go ahead and put it on a clean area or on your mat. And this is a good time to do a visual inspection of your dry suit. Start by checking the wrists and neck seals for nicks, folding, or stuck edges, and gently untuck them if they're rolled. And while you're inspecting them, if your seals are latex or silicone, a light dusting of talc powder is often a great idea while you're inspecting them. Just take a little bit of talc powder, put it on the inside of the seals, and then rub them together. This includes wrist and the neck seal. The talc powder will help them slide when you're putting them on and reduce chance of micro tears. But be careful of making a giant talc powder mess. If you just aren't careful, or you just drop that bag, you'll just have talc everywhere. So be warned. You don't need a lot, just a little pinch, enough that you can put it inside maybe the bottom part of the lip of one of your seals. And then what I usually do is mash them together to rub it and distribute across the seal. And you don't need to apply too much force rubbing. Just be soft and gentle with your seal. Next, go ahead, inspect your zipper track for debris, damaged teeth, or misalignment before you open it. And also just take a moment before you try to unzip it to make sure that the zipper track doesn't have any obstructions on it. Sometimes if you have a double zipper, just make sure that the teeth from the outside zipper are fully apart and you don't have any like ropes or anything that's going to get in the way. Make sure the zipper track is clear as possible. And now basically your suit is ready to put on. But remember, your dry suit is going to make you hot before the dive. It's going to keep you isolated from the environment during the dive, but you'll be pretty hot until you're in the water. So a good thing to take note on is get all the rest of your gear basically ready and lined up. And then when you're ready to gear up and get into the water, then you'll put on your thermals and then put on your suit. So go ahead and do any other prep work first, and then prepare to don so you don't overheat. What's important is that you want to choose the undergarments for the water temperature and your workload, and favor moisture wicking base layers that move sweat away from your skin. One important note here is that if you're using a tri-laminate dry suit, it provides zero thermal protection. So it's going to rely entirely on your undergarments. While a neoprene does have some thermal properties to it, so depending on how thick the neoprene is, you have some warmth from that. So you'll have to choose your undergarments appropriately for the suit and how cold the water is going to be. But you have all your stuff ready. Go ahead and put your undergarments on, and your seals are pre-talked, and so you're ready to start putting on your dry suit. Double check your main zippers opened all the way. One sneaky thing that I see happen to a lot of individuals is they haven't opened it all the way, leaving maybe the zipper halfway on the shoulder. That could cause damage to your zipper. You want to make sure it's all the way open. So just double check that before you start putting it on. And one small pro tip is if you're wearing wool socks, which I do highly recommend, put your wool socks on last over your thermal undergarments. This ensures that when you're putting your legs into your dry suit, it doesn't start bunching up your undergarments because your sock will be over the undergarments. So you'll want that zipper all the way open, and then you want to start putting your legs in first. Feed one foot through one of your pants legs and try to bring it up, and then try to get your other foot in as well and bring it up about to your knees. Now it's going to be a little bit hard to pull your dry suit up from here, so the important thing is to make sure you're not grabbing any delicate parts. Usually good places to grab is a lot of dry suits have a t-shirt kind of flap. That's usually a great spot to grab, but be your best judge. You want to make sure you're not grabbing some delicate bits. Some dry suits have overalls that may have very weak tabs, and if you're pulling on those, you'll just break your overalls. But some overalls may be stronger than others, so look and see what areas are kind of more prone to breaking than others. The t-shirt area is usually a good spot. If you have pockets, you can kind of pull those up a little bit and then switch to the t-shirt, but you want to pull it up slowly. Don't try to like jam it up. That's just going to stress the dry suit. Just pull it up slowly to your waist, and then that's a good time to go ahead and pause and put the overalls on. Which, by the way, I should have mentioned that when you're putting your feet in, it's good to maybe just grab the overalls a little bit. You want the overalls to be in front of your feet because it can actually put your feet into the dry suit over the overalls. And then when you're trying to put the overalls on, find that you're actually positioned on top of them, which will be kind of a pain. Some overalls you can disconnect and reconnect. Others you have to take your leg out. And one thing I forgot to also mention is when you're pulling it up to your waist, make sure your feet are fully seated in the heels. Sometimes, especially if the leg doesn't fit you well, you might have your foot down on the boot where it's pressed in a wrong direction, which will cause stress on the ankle joints if you're trying to pull it up to your waist. So seat that heel, make sure your foot is fully into that boot area. This is especially important if your suit has integrated socks and separate rock boots, because you want to make sure those socks lie super smooth with no twists. And while I'm checking my boots, if there's any straps, my feet generally have straps, so I'll go ahead and put the strap on my boot at that time too. I use rock boots. But again, you want, as you're pulling it up to the waist, you want to pull it up smoothly and make sure you're not twisting the zipper or creating sharp bends across the track. Do it slowly and wiggle. You definitely don't want to try and force it. After it's to the waist, and I usually put the overalls on, I usually do a small hop to get a little bit more of the fabric up. You don't want to put too much force. It's just allowing you to get a little bit more of that fabric up above your waist. If you have a telescoping torso, to make sure that strap is undone too, because that is just gonna make your life a lot easier while you're putting on the top of the dry suit. And at this point, you should feel the suspenders helping support your suit fairly well. One thing I will mention is if you're going to be walking around, make sure your wrist seals aren't poking out because those could catch the ground and potentially tear. So push them in. And what I generally do is stick them into the overalls if I need to walk around. If I don't, I'll just put it on immediately. But if I do need to walk around, stick them into your overalls so they're not hanging and creating weight on the zipper and potentially hitting things. And of course, if you're using a P valve, now is a good time to make sure that the P valve routing is in front. Sometimes I put my leg over it, so it's kind of a pain. It's often best, I should have mentioned it earlier, it's often best to check, just like you have to put your leg through the overalls, you generally want to make sure the P valve hose is in front. Otherwise, you'll have to do a little bit of gymnastics and try and get the hose up front, but it can be done. I've done it plenty of times. And of course, while you're putting that thing on, try to seek privacy. It can be hard in a parking lot, but do your best. And of course, make sure that hose lies smooth with no kinks. Otherwise, you'll be awfully disappointed when you need to use it. And maybe a quick note for P valve, because this will apply for men and women, whether you're using the condom catheter or the She-P. But in general, if I'm just doing one dive, I generally won't use the P valve. I can usually just hold it. But if I'm doing like a really long dive, or I'm doing multiple repetitive dives, I always use it. But with that said, I'll usually put it on way in advance so I don't have to do it in some strange parking lot, because that's just gonna be a hassle. So if you know you're gonna be using it, make sure you put on your She-P system or the catheter way in advance. This is gonna make your life a lot easier. So at this point, all you're doing is hooking it up. And if your P valve has an on-off function, make sure you double check that at this time to make sure that it's on the on setting, because I have experienced that too. Don't make that mistake like I did. And I'm saying these things because I feel not enough people talk about it, and almost everyone goes through it. The P-valve function of the dry suit is kind of an interesting experience, and so you're gonna have to learn it just as much as I am, and I'm hoping you can kind of learn from my mistakes. So just double check that on. Make sure that hose routing is clean and straight with no kinks, and you'll be able to use your system no problem. Of course, I have no footage to show you, or this entire video is going to be taken down, but you'll have to use your imagination. And I am familiar with the Scuba system because my wife does use it, and so fortunately I can say from experience that it works in the same way as the condom catheter. You would do it beforehand and everything works pretty much the same way. So all these tips are both good for men and women. But I will say the pre-setup of putting things on is quite a bit different. And Scuba definitely has a lot more going on there that is probably beyond the scope of this video. But of course, there is always the option to not use a P-valve. And so you have a choice of just holding it, which impressive if you do, or you can use the adult diaper. But remember, if you do use the adult diaper, remember capacity is limited. So plan conservatively and avoid that oversaturation risk. And if you have saturated your diaper, make sure you don't try to do any kind of gymnastics. You'll be awfully disappointed with your experience. For myself, I wasn't too keen to go to diaper route, so I just went straight to the P-valve. But my wife has a lot of experience with diapers, and it's kind of weird, you know, as an adult saying, oh, I'm going to buy diapers. But anyways, divers do what the divers gotta do to dive in cold water. And so the last thing to do is just make sure you're about to zip it up. And so this is usually the time where I try to stash keys in a pocket, if you have one, but make sure you put your electronic keys in a sealed plastic bag, just in case it does flood. Some dry suits have a nice little pouch here, which is awfully convenient. Maybe your undergarment has a pocket and you just kind of squeeze in your pocket, which is what I end up doing. But this is the time to put your keys, if you're shore diving anyways, in your suit so they can get back into your car. Make sure you avoid the metal teeth of your keys from scraping anywhere inside of your suit, because that abrasion could add up over time. Now, let's continue forward and put on the upper torso of our dry suit. So we're gonna start by putting one arm into the dry suit and pulling it through. But which arm? You want to pick the one that is going to have the zipper at your shoulder. That's the first one you want to pull through. So generally, that's your right arm. And so one small tip, while you're trying to put your arm through, make sure you keep your nails short. I mean, if you have long nails, that's fine, but you want to keep your nails inward. Otherwise, a small nick on your wrist seals could basically blow them. And so you don't want any micro tears. And so I generally will pull fabric over my hand and ball it like this, or I'll bring all my fingernails in like this. So if you have long fingernails, make sure you kind of do that so that you keep your nails away from the wrist seals. And with the talc powder, you're gonna find it's a lot easier. So bring your hand all the way through, and generally I'll grab fabric or something while I'm pulling through, because you'll find that if you don't, like while you're putting it through the dry suit, it'll kind of be pulled away, and I don't know, I hate that feeling, so maybe you do too. So just grab a piece of the fabric, pull through, and just kind of wiggle your wrist seal through and just push slowly. You don't want to like pop it through fast, just slow and steady. That talc powder will let it slide through. And then go ahead and pull the shoulder with the zipper up as so. One word of caution when trying to push your hand through is don't try to like grab it and yank on it, especially with your nails. If you are having a hard time, what you can do is try and put some fingers through and just kind of lever it like this while you're pushing your hand through and keeping your nails away from that wrist. But that will help just by putting some pressure and pushing through if you're having a hard time. The talc will help with it, so generally I can just push my wrist through, but if you are having a harder time, do that, but keep the nails away. Repeat for the other arm in the same fashion and check to make sure that both wrist seals are lying flat against the skin without rolls or waves. And then we're gonna go ahead and prepare for the next seal. If you have short hair like me, you'll have no problem. But if you have long hair, what I highly recommend is putting a buff on. And a buff is gonna help just kind of control your hair. You can also use a hairband and a ponytail. But you want to control your hair because if you don't, it's going to be a nightmare. That neck seal will not be gentle with your hair. And so after you deal with the hair situation, what you generally want to do is place your hands through the seal and pull it, generally in front of your face, trying to keep your nails away from the seal again, and just pull and push through like you're giving birth to yourself. But keep your fingers so that you're kind of pulling through your front of a face through to your chin, and then you can pull your hands back like this and pull the neck down behind you while keeping the neck mostly straight. You generally want to seat the neck seal mid-neck and keep it smooth, and smooth it until the contact surface is even and flush. Take a moment to assess the comfort, because the seal should feel snug but not choking or painful. If it is feeling choking or painful, you might find that a lot of neck seals have these like rings on them, and you might have to trim some of those rings off because yours might be size too small for your neckline. You don't want to be choked by your neck seal, but it should be snug. And make sure that it lays flat on your neck. You can usually check this yourself, but it's also good to ask a buddy just to double check that everything's flat. Now the time has come to seal your dry suit. Now it's going to depend where your zipper is for this, but for the self-done zipper that's across the torso, it's fairly straightforward. But to make it easy to zip, you're going to want to kind of pull your arm up so that you can straighten the zipper here. And you're gonna grab it and start pulling down the zipper. If you feel any force or resistance, try to move your arm around. Don't force the zipper. Just move your arm around until you feel it start zipping naturally. It shouldn't feel hard, but you'll find that the zipper doesn't zip smoothly always, but you shouldn't find like absolute resistance. You're gonna break the teeth if you try and force it. And then zip it all the way down. Once you get through the shoulder, it's usually pretty straightforward to zip it all the way down, but the one mistake a lot of people make is at the very end, you want to keep zipping until you kind of feel a satisfying click into place. It'll kind of just feel like there's something there that grabs at the very end. Then you know you're fully zipped. If you haven't felt that, there might be a small opening still that's going to start flooding as soon as you hit the water. So make sure you pull it until you have that full satisfying click. Again, don't force it. It should just feel natural right into the click. And of course, you have an extra zipper, go ahead and zip that too. That's just going to protect your inner zipper from rubbing, especially if the BCD strap and some dirt getting on it. And for his back entry zippers, maybe you have a string, you can do it yourself, but it's probably good to just ask a buddy to help. Assume the T-pose and let someone zip you up. Somebody help me. Of course, during this whole process, make sure you keep loose undergarment fabric from bunching under the zipper, because trapped clothing can compromise the seal. And so one quick thing you can do once the zipper's all the way closed is see if it's holding suction. And you're probably gonna have a bunch of gas in the suit anyways. So go ahead and fully open your exhaust valve or push it down. And what I generally do is kneel down and self-hug different areas so that I get the excess gas out of my suit. You should find the suit is slimming up if it's holding seal. If it's not, you'll find that the gas is basically just re-entering. But if you just kind of hug all that gas out, you'll feel it's much more snug now. And if you kind of want to test what that feels like, one quick thing you can do is just take a wrist seal, put one finger down the wrist seal, pull it out, and you'll feel the gas return to your suit naturally. And so you can then put your wrist seal back down and get the gas out again. So this is a good way of just feeling if you have the seal or not. Now, you're almost ready to get the rest of the gear on, but at this time, double check that everything is looking fit and trim on your suit. This is usually a good time to just look things over and make sure that nothing's dangling, everything's where it needs to be, and then you can get the rest of the kit on. If you have a telescope torso, you can go ahead and buckle the crotch strap into place as well, which will help kind of keep the fabric and positioning of your suit in a better place. So next is going to be kind of personal preference, but if you like to have your hands free to get the rest of your kit on, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you don't mind, you can get your dry gloves on now, or wet gloves, whatever have you. But generally, I will put my dry suit gloves on before the rest of my kit. So it just works well for me. So pick one, but the most important thing is keep it consistent so that once you build a system, if you do it always the same way, you'll find that you hopefully do it the right way every single time. Wet gloves are easy, but if you do have dry gloves, one thing you have to make sure that you do is that you can equalize your dry gloves. Of course, if you have wrist seals. I know some people will just take the wrist seals off and have permanent dry gloves, but that's an option. But generally, I'll keep the wrist seals on and the dry gloves on top of the wrist seals. And so the only thing you have to be aware of is you want to put a comfortable little surgical tube, kind of like this tubing here. And so it's comfortable, it's easy, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. You could actually use a hairband or, piece of string, as long as it's big enough, and just put it inside your wrist seal to break the seal. So it's not, you're gonna feel that gas returning to your suit, but this will be a good time to kind of put it in there and then put your insulation glove on, because dry suit gloves, just like your dry suit, don't provide warmth, and so you need an insulation glove on there, and then you can put your dry glove on. You might have to hug yourself again to get that gas out once you put your dry gloves on, because you'll have broken the seal. And of course, for dry gloves, it's going to depend if you're doing pullover. It's cool if you can do it yourself, you can practice that, but a lot of people, especially if you're a beginner dry suit diver, you're probably gonna just snap your dry gloves in half. So it's good to just have help. Generally, you'll have someone help grab with two hands, and you'll just kind of push into their chest, and then they'll just pull it up and over your dry suit wrist area. And that should basically give you enough seal. I know a lot of great divers who just do pullovers for years, and so that's fine. If you choose a system, then systems are usually a bit easier, but there's so many systems that it's hard to, I'm not gonna even go there in this video. But they're usually easy to put on. They should be easy to put on by yourself. That's the whole idea of a system. But once it's clicked into place, you should be able to hug yourself and see that your suit is pressurized. And so we have successfully donned our dry suit. Piece of cake, right? It's a little bit more intricate than a wetsuit for sure, but I guarantee you once you get in the habit of it, it gets easier over time. So if you are new and you're just kind of learning how to be in a dry suit, I highly recommend that you don't try to just dry run the first time you're going diving and maybe on a timetable. It's a better idea to go ahead and practice fully donning this at home. Just make sure you don't overheat at home, of course. But it's a good idea to just kind of put it on, take it off, be gentle with it, and learn the ins and outs of your suit before your dive day. Then you'll be zipped, vented, and ready. But the real lifespan booster begins the moment you are back at shore. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, now's a great time to like and subscribe. I post weekly content to help divers grow their skills, build confidence, and explore the ocean with curiosity and care. And by the way, I have a monthly newsletter for free. If you're wanting to keep up with the latest and greatest of scuba diving industry, feel free to subscribe in the description below. Okay, next, let's talk about that post-dive care. Your dry suit is an expensive piece of equipment, and because it needs to keep that seal to keep you dry, dive and dive again, you gotta pamper it a little bit, a lot more than a wetsuit. So after the dive, before you start taking off your dry suit, it's a great time to try and take a shower. This isn't going to be available everywhere, but if you do have a dive site that has a shower nearby, excellent choice. I've seen some divers carry a basically shower in their car, at the back of their car, and they can shower at their car, which is pretty cool. I haven't got there yet, but maybe someday. But I do find it easiest to shower before taking off the dry suit. But if this isn't an option for you, you can take it off and then give it a rinse down. Just make sure you don't get water inside your suit at the earliest possible convenience. But in general, you want to rinse your suit with fresh water and let it hit all the fabric to take that salt off. And particularly ensure you rinse your dry glove system, zipper, D-rings, inflator valve, and dump valves. At a minimum, ensure you rinse off all visible sand from boots and lower legs before you peel the suit down. If you lack fresh water, you can use a small bucket of salt water for this, just the legs. It's funny, I have some jet fins, which I kind of found annoying that they held water when I get out of the water because they don't have a little hole to drain water from the foot pocket, which I did find annoying, but then later I found that's kind of a feature because now I have 2 buckets when I get to my car that I can rinse all that sand off. So when you have lemons, make lemonade. But the primary reason to get all that salt off, especially the fabric, is that salt water dries into sharp crystals that braid fabric and promote corrosion on metal components, particularly steel components. But it can corrode other things as well over time. But the goal is to just rinse it down with that fresh water. All the fabric, all the metal bits, definitely the valves, and all the moving parts, and the zipper, especially if you have a metal zipper. When washing your suit with fresh water, use cold or warm water, not hot, because excessive heat can harm adhesives and laminates. For stubborn dirt around the zipper seams, use a soft toothbrush, not a hard one, or light rubbing with your finger to avoid scuffing the coating, or removing the zipper grease. Do not use harsh detergents or solvents because they can damage the seam tape and suit coatings. Be absolutely sure to rinse the inflator valve and your exhaust dump valve so salt does not crust around the moving parts or O-rings. And generally, I will twist it and push it down a few times to flush the seat and keep it moving freely. And generally, I will turn it a few times and make sure I push it down to make sure I flush the seal around it thoroughly with fresh water. And so that's usually good enough. It doesn't take too long, but of course you gotta wash your other gear too, which I won't get into in this video. But later, once the suit is removed and you potentially return home, or at least you're ready to store your dry suit, if you had a flood or heavy perspiration, or that P valve was actually closed, you'll want to make sure the inside gets dried and potentially washed. You can use fresh water to flush it out if needed and intentionally flood the thing. But I wouldn't use any cleaner or anything. Just fresh water, let it flood, clean, and then now you have to dry it. And so how you dry it is going to depend if you have socks or rock boots. So socks are a little bit easier. So you can just pull the legs inside out and no problem. It's so much easier to dry the thing out. But if you have rock boots, that's going to be a little bit more tricky in the way you're going to have to turn it upside down and find a way to prop it up. So this is probably the easiest way because gravity will help bring the water down and dry the inside. You can use purpose-built dryers, something like this, for example, which is a telescoping dryer that you can basically extend, and it pushes air to the boots while your suit lays upside down, and this pushes through the leg. And so it's an ingenious idea because it blows air through the legs and it pushes it out your zipper. And so this is a fantastic design called Tri-Dive Diving, and it works off USB-C, and it's portable, so you can take this with you on your trips as well. So it's a nice dryer. Another solution is using a hanger like this, which is going to push air from the top. This thing is called hang air. You get it? Hanger, hang air. So that's kind of clever, but also it's going to, basically your dry suit will hang on the top and your neck will be here, and it's going to push air down. So this is where you'll close the zipper and just let it push air through. Not close it all the way because you probably want some ventilation coming out of your zipper, but you want to close it a little bit to protect the zipper area and obviously not allow your suit to hang on the zipper too much. So this will push air from the top. If by some chance an odor develops in your suit over time, you'll want to clean the interior, but use a manufacturer approved cleaner or a correctly diluted sanitizer such as Stearamine and rinse thoroughly, but not harshly. Avoid bleach and scented household cleaners because residues can irritate the skin and weaken the materials of the dry suit. And of course, before you wear it again, make sure you allow your dry suit to dry fully. And once fully dry, prepare the suit for storage by folding it with the zipper always straight and protected. You want it always straight as possible so that nothing heavy is on it and it's always kept straight. You can do one last inspection for the neck seals and small nicks. It doesn't hurt to put a little bit of talc on them as well to keep them soft while in storage. And then make sure you tuck the seals in. You don't want them sticking out while in storage for something to potentially grab them and tear them. And so now you want to roll the legs from the boots upward to the waist to avoid sharp creases and keep the panels aligned. Fold the arms across the torso so that the zipper track remains flat and shielded by the fabric, not bent outward. And then you want to go ahead and pack the suit into a nice flat, round burrito that spreads load rather than creating stress lines. And of course, store the suit in a cool, dry, dark place out of the sun because the sun will degrade the material. You can leave it hanging, but do not hang the suit by thin wire hangers because that will cause sharp bends and creasing in the fabric. Ideally, you want to use a big broad hanger like this that will keep the shoulders fairly broad and wide and distribute the load of the heavy suit across it. And while in storage or in transit, try to never leave your suit compressed under heavy gear or in a hot vehicle where adhesive and laminates can start deforming. And if you're traveling with your dry suit, make sure you protect that zipper path. You can go ahead and put clothes on the zipper path or put some insert in the upper torso to keep the zipper path as straight as possible while in transit. And one pro tip is you might want to go ahead and keep a small adhesive or a patch kit in your Save a Dive kit for travel or even local diving to make sure that if you develop a small pin prick break of your dry suit that you can go ahead and patch it on the go. Usually if you know where it is, it might just need a little bit of adhesive and a little bit of sealant and it'll be good to go for more diving, especially if you're on a trip. It's usually a good idea. Not to mention replacement wrist seals and neck seal in case those break. Of course, not all neck seals are replaceable, but if you have replaceable neck seals, make sure you have replacement neck seals in case that breaks. Oh, and one small tip, when you're taking off the dry suit, it can be a lot harder to take those seals off when you're taking it off, especially the wrist seals. So make sure that you go ahead and use your fingers, always be careful of the nails, pull the wrist seal and just inch it up a little bit and then maybe go to the back, inch it up a little bit more. Try not to like just manhandle the thing and just grab it because you're just putting stress on the wrist seal. So just kind of work it around and just take your time. It might take a little bit, but it's better to take a little bit longer and protect those wrist seals than trying to just basically rip it and you're going to be really bummed. Make sure you have replacements, but just in case you break it, they're expensive. So you don't want to be breaking them all the time. You want to baby those seals. Okay, so now we talked about taking it off, rinsing it, and storing it and keeping it dried the right way. Let's talk about one more important thing that's going to make or break your dry suit experience: the zipper. The waterproof zipper is the spine of your dry suit and is expensive to replace if you damage it. Rinsing is essential, but the wrong lubricant after rinsing is what silently destroys many zippers. Avoid WD-40 for metal zippers and generic silicone sprays, petroleum jelly, and other household oils because those can really attack the materials and attract debris. And on top of that, know your zipper type because care differs between metal and the hard plastic teeth designs. If you have a metal tooth zipper, use manufacturer approved zipper wax sparingly on the outer surface of the teeth. If you have a hard plastic zipper, try to use dry suit specific lubricant for the teeth. It applies better, it keeps from attracting debris, and it'll generally keep your teeth lasting longer. But of course, before applying any grease to your zipper, inspect it and make sure you clean the zipper track gently with fresh water and ensure there's no grit or debris. Just make sure the track is dry so the lubricant bonds where it should and does not trap water or contaminants. You can use cotton swabs to lift stubborn grains of sand between the elements without scraping the zipper. The key is you want to apply a small amount of correct lubricant to the area where the zipper is going to click into place. Remember that satisfying click from earlier? You want to go ahead and apply it around that place. So pull the zipper away, apply it, and then click it to that satisfying click. And then now go ahead and roll it back and forth. It could be easier while it's on, but you can do it while it's off as well. But roll it back and forth at least 4 or 5 times. You don't have to necessarily go all the way, but at least half or 3/4 of the way to make sure you're moving that lubricant up and down your zipper. Avoid applying the zipper grease directly across the whole zipper because it's usually going to be applied too much and that's just going to invite more grit and dirt sticking to your zipper. If there is excess on the zipper, make sure you go ahead and take a soft cloth and try to take as much of it off as possible. The key is you don't want to see visible clumps of grease. You want it shiny, but not visibly greasy, if that makes sense. It's always okay to go ahead and remove it and try to re-grease again if you think you botched it. It's good to practice. Once you get the hang of it, it's gonna be no problem. And one quick note that I should have mentioned while I was talking about donning, what I'm gonna go ahead and mention now is trying to baby that zipper. And so you really want to make sure that you don't put too much extra friction on it. So while you're zipping it down, let's say on the very top, or if you're zipping it up to get out of it, you're going to make sure you have two hands and put one hand on the t-shirt or the fabric just below the zipper, because you want to make sure the zipper is straight as possible the entire time. So that will help straighten it out. And then you use your other hand to start zipping it up like this. And as it's zipping up, you're unzipping it rather, you're going to keep moving your hand up to help the zipper keep straight. And all the way up to the shoulder, you remember you want to unzip it fully before trying to get it out, because often a mistake is to have it not fully unzipped, and it will find that you'll have teeth here that are having extra force applied to them while you're getting out of the suit. So you want to make sure you unzip it fully so that it's up and over the shoulder. So while you're doing that, raise your arm, because you'll find it's a lot easier. Kind of bend it forward, and you can usually take the zipper all the way until you basically hit the end of the zipper track. And of course, when you're zipping it up, I mentioned it earlier, but it's fairly straightforward. But you just want to use the other hand to keep the zipper straight as you're going all the way down until you feel that satisfying click at the end. And one more note about the zipper greasing action is that you don't have to generally grease it that often. I generally only grease it when it starts feeling a bit harder to zip. So I kind of do it more ad hoc, like, okay, this is feeling a little bit harder to zip, so I'm gonna go ahead and grease it when I get home. And that's fine. You can do it ad hoc. It doesn't need to be like every 10 dives or something. You just kind of feel it out. And when it feels hard to zip, go ahead and grease it. If you start noticing a rough spot in your zipper track, it generally means you might have a piece of debris on the zipper track. So you might want to take a very quick inspection on the teeth and see if there's anything you can remove with a small utensil to get it out of the teeth. But if you ever find that maybe, oops, I took a little bit too much force with the teeth, and you break a tooth and you visibly see that a tooth is missing, it's important to note that you need to schedule a repair for your dry suit, because it won't hold the seal. If the teeth aren't all clicking together, it could also be maybe holding a little bit of a seal, but it could break during a dive, which is going to not be pleasant at all. So if a tooth is broken, it's time to get it repaired. But that consistent inspection of the teeth and using a light, correct lubricant for your zipper with gentle operation keeps the seal reliable, and it can save you hundreds of dollars over the life of the suit. That single habit alone prevents most premature zipper failures and canceled dive days. Treat the zipper like a precision instrument rather than a jacket zip, and it will reward you with smooth, predictable operation. Treat the suit right, and it will keep you warm, dry, and diving for years to come. You have the system now, so enjoy the dives and protect your investment. If you're looking for more tips on buying the right dry suit or operating a dry suit, then these videos are perfect to watch next. The more you know, the more you'll love and protect the ocean. Until next time.